once again, this is Paul Glumaz with General Welfare Presents. And today is the 2nd of October. And boy, things are heating up. Now, I'll cut to the chase. Okay? What Donald Trump said was absolutely correct. This is not an impeachment. It's a coup. They want to get Donald Trump out of the way now because the financial system is coming down and they don't want Donald Trump in the presidency when the financial system comes down. Why? Because the president, like FDR, when the last time the financial system totally collapsed, the president has the ear of the nation. The president is the one, the executive is the one that everybody looks to for direction. And if that president has a plan that's going to work, it's going to be the LaRouche plan. It's going to be Glass-Steagall. It's going to be creating credit for real economic development. It's going to be separating the banks. Okay, that's what a president who will act has to do. And they don't know if Donald Trump will not do that. They are worried he might do that. And so he has to be removed. Or if not removed, so damaged that he will be unable to mobilize the Congress and the American people who will mobilize the Congress in a crisis to achieve the necessary policy. So that's why this impeachment thing is going on, but it's not an impeachment. It's get Trump out of the way as soon as possible. The second reason is Trump is consolidating power right now. He's kicked Bolton out. He's put in more of his own people. The military situation is shifting where he's going to be able to appoint a lot of military people. But the other thing is the Trump organization, which is going to be the campaign organization, is growing. And in the campaign for president. And in that process of growing, the campaign organization will, as in other situations, will become the dominant force in the Republican Party. And the Republican Party establishment, which is no different than the Democratic Party establishment, is totally freaked out. Because these people coming in are not loyal to the establishment. They're not loyal to the financial community. They're loyal to Make America Great Again, Donald Trump. So that's the situation. So he's creating a movement and an organization, and that organization is going to grow throughout the campaign. And the longer they wait, the more Trump will consolidate power. Also, people around the world, leaders around the world, have had a chance to meet privately with the president, and they now recognize that he represents the America that they used to admire. Even in whatever form he represents it, they recognize he represents that impulse. And for them, whether or not Trump survives is an international issue. Whether or not the fate of humanity, to a large degree, as far as leaders like Xi Jinping and Putin and Modi and leaders all over the world, rests on whether Trump can consolidate and carry out the policy that he's been making very clear. And what is the policy? To end all these wars and rebuild and have economic development and collaboration with other nations. That's a sin. That's a sin. That's a crime. And while Pelosi is now going all out for impeachment, she went ahead and launched this impeachment drive without consulting the Democratic caucus. There are many, many Democrats who do not want to go this way because they believe that it will end their political careers. But she's telling them it is better that you end your political career on the sword of impeachment than to allow this guy to continue to consolidate, than to allow this guy to continue to be in power. So this is like, we're going to sacrifice the election for an all-out effort, which if it fails, will have massive consequences in the election. it's not just a question of electing Trump, it's the question of electing the Congress. The last congressional race in 2018, most of the Democrats who survived in tight races survived because they were popular with their constituents and they were pledged not to go against Trump. Those are the candidates that are right now being told to fall on the impeachment sword or the Trump removal sword. So this is where we are now. What has happened is that somehow a whistleblower measure got through somehow, and it's not clear how this happened, where the whistleblower can blow the whistle without ever anyone finding out who the whistleblower is. And it's alleged that Adam Schiff actually collaborated with somebody to create this story, which is completely at odds with the actual conversation that Donald Trump had with the Ukrainian president. Because what the whistleblower was saying was actually not what actually happened, but if taken at its face value, could be the grounds for motions in the direction of impeachment. Donald Trump had to release the transcript of the conversation with the president of Ukraine. You can't do that, though. That damages your foreign policy, because it means that any conversation that any leader has with the U.S. president is subject to being revealed, leaked, put out to the public. You can't conduct foreign policy that way. So it's a total monkey wrench in the foreign policy apparatus. And then the Congress is screaming about getting the actual transcripts of the private conversations between Putin and Trump. You can't do that to the president. Article 2 of the Constitution, which defines the powers of the executive, puts the president in charge of foreign policy with some oversight by the Congress, the foreign affairs, by the foreign affairs committees, but by the Senate actually, but not to run the foreign policy, not to interfere with the president's activity. So we have a situation where this process of leaking and protecting the leakers, and you never know if the leakers actually exist, and you don't even know who they are, and allegedly this can be used in the impeachment process without ever revealing who it is. And so if it goes past this House and goes into the Senate for the trial, they're going to say, well, we can't release this person because we got to protect it. Therefore, the Senate has to make a decision on whether they are going to accept evidence where you don't know the accuser and you don't know if it's real or not. This is not impeachment, as the president said. This is a coup. And there are a lot of Republican senators of the traditional establishment part of the Republican Party that perhaps if they thought they could get away with it, they would add the extra votes to the Democratic caucus in the Senate to see the president thrown out. And if they do that under these circumstances, without allowing a full disclosure of what's going on, or with allowing a full disclosure of what's going on, I don't think the population is going to be, shall we say, passive about it. Let's just say I don't expect the population to be passive in that situation. So when the president says it's not an impeachment, it's a coup, what does that tell the population and tell Trump supporters? It means this is really not an impeachment. The elections are coming. Why don't you remove Trump through the electoral process? Right? Where's the crime? Well, we create the crime. That's the rocket docket. That's the rocket impeachment. The rocket impeachment, we create the crime, we stick it on you, and then we ram it through the Senate. The rocket docket on Lyndon LaRouche in Alexandria, they indicted him in October, and they had him railroaded into prison by the end of November. The rocket docket, right? That's what you're looking at, a rocket docket impeachment. And this is, and the Democrats are, the pressure on the Democrats to go along with this is massive. But if every one of these Democrats that votes for impeachment is going to be crucified politically in their district, in those swing districts, where there's a lot of Trump support. And they're being told, yes, you will be crucified, but you have to vote for impeachment. So it's in that context that all this is going on. And now, I'm going to bring something else up, which may not seem to be related to this, but is very, very significant on the global strategic situation, and has a lot to do with the fact that Trump isn't going along. Now, what happened was there was this attack on the oil refineries in Saudi Arabia. Pompeo, Secretary of State Pompeo, blamed Iran, but there was no proof that Iran did it. Other people said it was the Houthis or the Yemenis. But everyone claimed, well, they don't have the sophistication to be able to run this kind of operation. This is a very sophisticated operation involving a drone, involving surveillance, pinpoint, what have you. So last Saturday, a 3-day battle came to an end, in which 3 battalions, over 6,000 Saudi mercenaries and troops, with the most advanced modern equipment, were forced to surrender, were enveloped. Their communications was disrupted by electronic warfare. Various abilities to put air power in to defend them was disrupted by a number of different attacks on various different places. It was the most sophisticated and coordinated by the Houthis and the Yemeni army. They captured thousands, they probably killed thousands of Saudi mercenaries, and captured thousands of Saudis. This happened, and this became public Saturday, but it has not been put out in the general media. It has come out, but it has not been put in the general media. It's on various blogs, but it's not put out in the general media. This is huge. You have to understand how huge this is. The Saudis spend more money on armaments than Russia, probably more than China. They have the most modern equipment. They have unlimited money in mercenaries. And they got defeated by the poorest country in the world, which is under siege, with people starving to death and everything. The Houthis and the Yemeni army, which is their 2 forces together, they have demonstrated to the world that if you have the will to fight and not give in, and the capability to the point to defeat the Saudis, whose troops have no loyalty to Saudi Arabia, they're just mercenaries. And this is huge. Why? Because Saudi Arabia is about to cease to exist if they don't make a peace with the Yemen. They're about to cease to exist. U.S. military told Mohammed bin Salman not to do this. It would destroy Saudi Arabia. Well, Saudi Arabia is now is about to be destroyed. Now you have to understand, the Saudis, the Qataris, the Qatars, the Qatar, UAE, they have pumped not just billions, probably in the trillion over the years into mercenary terrorist operations all over the world, all over the Middle East, all over Africa, 9/11. All of this is paid for by money from these countries, especially Saudi Arabia. That's what the lawsuit in New York to indemnify the Saudi Arabia for the deaths of the people in 9/11 is all about. Because, and that followed the release of the 28 pages. So this whole thing with Saudi Arabia, they are at the center of the financial, the offshore financial and the illegal financial flows and the drug trade and the oil and all of that. They're at the center of all this. And they're in deep trouble. And they have to sue for peace at this point. This is huge. And Putin is going to be visiting them soon. Now, when this oil thing, when half of Saudi's oil production was destroyed, and Trump did not go in and bomb Iran's oil facilities, which he was being demanded. Lindsey Graham demanded it. Pompeo demanded it. Bolton demanded it. He didn't do it. He's a traitor for not doing it in the eyes of the establishment. He's not doing their job. Okay. So now, on another flank, we have the green thing coming on. We had Greta at the United Nations, Greta Thunberg at the United Nations. We have this whole massive green operation. It's really not having that much traction. But the media coverage of it is such that it gives the financial community the excuse to cut off money for industry on the pretext of the carbon issue. And to do so, shift money to carbon, to areas of industry which are going to follow the carbon, whatever. This is designed to collapse nations. To collapse them. And channel the money into so-called green jobs or the Green New Deal. What is the Green New Deal? Instead of doing like what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in 1933, which is to create credit from the Reconstruction Finance Corporation to go out there and build the infrastructure. This is the same thing, but it's not going to go for infrastructure. It's going to go for these worthless green projects. This is the Green New Deal. This is the opposite. This is and they're saying we got our idea from FDR. Baloney, you got your idea from the Wall Street and the City of London financial system. And Mark Carney basically said this a week ago last Monday at the climate summit at the United Nations. This is what they're going to do. They're going to redline the physical economy for all this green stuff. And they're going to try to suck in all these pension funds into it. All of the credit that's out there into worthless investments. And then have the whole thing collapse. And bring everybody down. That's their, ultimate Atlas Shrugged moment, when they bring everything down and then everything God gets to sort out, God gets to sort it out, And that is, after a nuclear war and everything, if there's a nuclear war, collapse. That's what they want to do. The other thing is, this is the counter to the Belt and Road. LaRouche's policy, which is the basis for the new global economic system, is the infrastructure development of the Belt and Road. That becomes the basis for creating financial activity which actually generates physical development, which actually creates a good investment, an investment that has a real return. It's not based on speculation. It's not based on inflating the stock market or having all these companies buy their own stock. So when you have negative interest rates and inverted bond yields, then you're at the end of the system. So the expansion of the Belt and Road is ultimately the other system, which is what the French finance minister Bruno Le Maire said. that's what you're going to end up with if you don't go with a new system. And the new system is the Green New Deal. It's the new system. It's the Green New Deal. We're going to put everybody to work in low energy projects. I mean, that's insane. So lots of luck trying to use the military to round these people up in the work camps to be able to do the Green New Deal. That's kind of not going to really work. But the situation with the Saudi Arabia is very important. It's a very significant turning point militarily in the world. It means an end to the power of the empire in terms of its military capacity to deploy terrorism all over the world and destroy nations. It's the beginning of the end of that military power, because these countries have now survived. Yemen has survived. Syria has survived. Lebanon has survived because of Hezbollah. And we're entering a whole new military sphere where the very expensive military hardware of the United States is not working with the new modern air defense systems that the Russians are selling to everybody. S-200, S-300, S-400. And the Russians' air defense systems actually are multi-layered, so that you can't sneak a drone in under the horizon, which is what the Israelis and others are claiming happened in the blowing up of the oil fields. They were able to sneak these drones in under the horizon because the Patriot missile system is not about the horizon, or the THAAD missile system is not about the horizon. It's about picking up missiles higher up. So all these vulnerabilities, all these cracks, aircraft carriers don't mean anything anymore. You send the planes off to bomb, and none of them may come back. You send Tomahawk missiles at the sites, and most of them are going to get knocked down. They don't travel very fast. Meanwhile, the Russians have hypersonic missiles. The Chinese are developing hypersonic missiles. So the whole military equation has shifted. And as the new defense secretary is saying, I believe, he said this, we are now ending the period of low-intensity warfare, that the world was governed by low-intensity warfare or irregular warfare. But now it's high-intensity warfare, meaning if you're going to have war, it's going to be nuclear war. This low-intensity warfare thing that's been used to try to control the world is no longer works. This is huge. The U.S. military supremacy does not exist anymore. Not because the Russians are superior, and not because the Chinese are superior, but because the defensive technologies have reached a point where they are punitive to the aggressive efforts of offensive. Meanwhile, the U.S. is preparing to have this anti-ballistic missile system, or this going into effect, this anti-ballistic missile system in Romania and Poland. And the idea is the missiles that are going to intercept Russian missiles, but they don't say it's Russian missiles. They say it's going to intercept the non-existent Iranian missiles, which is why they're supposedly building it, which nobody believes that's true. And the Iranians don't seem to be moving too fast on developing the nuclear missile capability. Therefore, it's meant for Russia. But these so-called defensive missiles are really offensive missiles. That's what they really are. They've been transformed into offensive missiles that can hit targets within a matter of a few minutes inside Russia. So that's called prompt global strike. So you set up this radar system that can supposedly track Iranian missiles, but it's really designed to be an offensive system to be used against Russian targets. And the idea is, if you launch a preemptive strike, you can knock out all the command centers and stop. But the Russians don't have a dead hand policy, which means if you knock us out, we have an automatic nuclear system that will go into effect. It's called the dead hands, what the Soviets had. So that's not going to work. But that's where we are. We are at an incredible turning point in world history. And if Trump survives the effort to remove him and we have a financial collapse, then LaRouche's policies will become the policies that will be adopted by the United States and the world, because there are no other policies that have been presented that would work. And that's to some degree acknowledged implicitly around the world.
Okay, Paul.
All right, we are gathered here across the street from the Federal Bureau of Investigation headquarters. We didn't want to get too close because they're kind of touchy. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is not really federal. It's not really a bureau, and it doesn't really investigate. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is a criminal entity acting on behalf of the Saudi British interest, acting on behalf of a global financial criminal structure. It is the enforcement arm. It is the spying arm. It is the blackmailing arm. It is the frame-up arm. It is the protector of terrorism in the United States.
Common stock investments have helped to make our country prosperous and powerful. Owning a share in American industry is like owning a share in the future of our nation. But remember, John Q., there is a risk as well as an advantage in owning any kind of property. So get the facts before you put your money to work.